when you're feeling crappy after being treated like crap, because that's kind of how it feels, let's be honest with each other. The last thing you want to do is go out there and search for a job. You just might want to go be in a hole somewhere. I totally get that. Or you might just race into job searching with a ton of urgency and not process what you've been going through, not process the feelings. You cannot race right into it and ignore the feelings and push all that stuff down and not have it affect you at some point. Welcome to the Love Your Work Life podcast, where you will get encouragement, strategies, all the things you need to love your work life. This is about transformational, strength-based coaching for career, for leadership, for life. I'm your host, Elissa Shuck. Let's get started. It's been a rough week out there, my friends. There's massive layoffs, big news. You know, these stories get a lot of traction, and there's a lot of people, I'm sure, that are just in shock and despair and feeling all kinds of things with regards to this layoff. In fact, if you've ever been laid off, the news of these kinds of things tends to be a little bit triggering even. You start to kind of feel the reverb of your own layoff experiences. I felt that too, to some extent, because these are the kind of traumatic experiences that just embed themselves into our nervous system. Oddly enough, all my layoffs during my career happened in February. And in the off years from the layoff, I always felt a little weird. I always felt a little off in February. And then I learned about how those kind of traumatic events really imprint themselves on our nervous system. And I was like, oh, okay. So that's why mid-February feels a little icky and disconcerting. It's not my brain, it's my body. My body's actually running the show at that point, instead of my brain thinking, hey, look, nothing's happening, everything's fine. So it's important that we talk about these kinds of traumatic events, the things that are affecting you, so that you can manage it. This is about emotional regulation. This is about you taking charge consciously and intentionally to navigate what's going on in your life. So I want to walk you through 4 things that you can do if you've been laid off. And quite honestly, we should be doing these 4 things for ourselves on a regular basis. So if you've been laid off, this is going to help tremendously. If you know someone who's been laid off, share these little strategies with them. And if you happen to be in a good place right now, well, you can make it even better when you apply these things to your work life and just make them a regular habit. So let's just dive right in to what these things are. Listen, let's be real. We have a lot of emotions around a layoff because it's jarring. It's really a loss. And it's just like any other major loss in your life, you are going to experience all the feels. You might experience feelings of betrayal, the why me, I gave so much, I did this, I created these results. There's all kinds of things that are happening in your mind when it comes to loss. You might feel really deep grief. I remember that being a major component of my layoffs, of just feeling a deep sense of grief, because we actually like to work. we actually have an instinct for work, using our minds, being creative, using our hands, collaborating with other people. So it's natural that you'd be having all kinds of feelings and maybe even a wide variety of feelings around a layoff. And that's why I know these 4 things I'm going to talk about today will help you reset yourself, because when you're feeling crappy after being treated like crap, because that's kind of how it feels, let's be honest with each other, the last thing you want to do is go out there and search for a job. I mean, you just might want to go be in a hole somewhere. I totally get that. Or you might just race into job searching with a ton of urgency and not process what you've been going through, not process the feelings. And that tended to be my method, and it will come back to haunt you. You cannot race right into it and ignore the feelings and push all that stuff down and not have it affect you at some point. So these 4 things are going to help you process what's happening and reset, rebuild your sense of confidence in yourself, rebuild your emotional stability at the same time. So the first thing is to write down your accomplishments. And this is something that we should all be doing on a regular basis anyway. Write them down every week, write them down every month, maybe quarterly. Think of a timing that works for you. But this will help you appreciate the value of your contributions and to relive some of those great feelings, things that you're just your favorite things that you did. I also suggest that if you have some good job performance reviews, pull those babies out again. Reread the wonderful things that were said about you, those reminders of your skills and your characteristics and the traits that you bring to work with you. That stuff doesn't go away just because you lost your job. That stuff only accumulates. It travels with you to your next job. But when you're dealing with a loss like this, you have to be really intentional and strategic about bringing those things to mind again. So think of the recent results, go way back, look at your job performance reviews, highlight the things that make you feel good. Do it often. I'll say this about this and really about all 4 of these things. This is a wash, rinse, repeat thing, because you might help yourself feel better, but it might also be a little bit temporary. Remember, this loss imprinted on your nervous system, which means that sometimes your nervous system is going to run the show, and you might suddenly be feeling negative, feeling loss, feeling betrayed, might just come up seemingly for no reason. So you want to have these practices on rinse and repeat so that any time that comes up, you are reconditioning your mind, those neurological pathways, and you're reconditioning your nervous system so that it doesn't take over at inopportune times. Okay? So write down your accomplishments. I personally like handwriting these things. You may have a really great job performance review. So a wonderful way to process that and to re-embed that into yourself is to just look at what someone said about you and then rewrite it in first person. I am someone who collaborates well with others. Whatever it is, take those words and personalize it, write it in first person. We just process things a little bit better when we handwrite things down. You can always take what you've handwritten and retype that into a Word document, a Google Doc. Very helpful when you're preparing for interviews or you're updating your resume is to have those accomplishments at the ready. Create a menu of accomplishments. That's what I always tell my clients is we get their resume done and it's looking really awesome. And there's really cool ways to kind of swap accomplishments in and out in the way I structure a resume. So I just tell them, hey, create a menu. Just create a document of all your favorite accomplishments. So it's really easy for you to leverage them on your resume and in interviews. Now, the next thing to do is reflect on what you liked best and what you didn't. Now, this isn't about, reliving ugly things at your job, but giving equal airtime to what was working and what wasn't is very empowering because you'll realize that sometimes the way your brain is romanticizing that job of it was perfect, I'll never find anything like it again. No, there was stuff that was happening that wasn't your favorite. And it's okay to remember those things. We have a lot of good going on in the workplace, but let's be real, not everything is rainbows and butterflies. And when you remember that, it will help you disconnect. That acknowledgement means that you are setting yourself for moving on. You're setting yourself up for moving on. So give yourself that equal airtime. It's important that you don't resist or deny or push down anything, and instead add that little bit of acknowledgement that, you know what, everything wasn't perfect. And because if you think it's all perfect and your brain goes to, I'll never find anything like that again. Oh, this was my dream job. That's wonderful. But your dream job had some flaws, and acknowledging them will give you some space for visualizing yourself in your next job. All right. The next thing is to reevaluate your destination. I love this idea because it's something that can really help you think about what's next, to visualize what's possible for you. Look at the things you did and align your natural behavioral strength traits, your key skills, and your experience to what might be next for you. And sometimes this is a little bit like reverse engineering because you may have a destination in mind and now you're working backwards and asking yourself questions like, what skills do I have that equip me for that particular job? I always like these interruptions in our careers to be moments to reevaluate because maybe you're ready for a promotion. Maybe you were in this job and 2 years ago, you started thinking about how you were going to grow and where you were going to go from here. This moment in time at a layoff is the perfect time to give yourself a promotion. Is the next step in your career happening now, and it just happens to be at a new place and where you're going to apply? Think about it in those terms. Maybe it's a pivot. Maybe you loved your job, it was good, but there was but when you start looking at that equal airtime, it's not actually equal. It's more like 60% you didn't like and 40% you liked. Well, that might be telling you something. That might be telling you that a little bit of a pivot, a little bit of a shift is in order. And this is the perfect time to reevaluate your destination, where you go from here. Now, when you are outlining your natural behavioral strength traits, the key skills, and your experience, make sure that you're focused on, especially when it comes to skills and experience, make sure that you're focused on the things that you enjoy. Don't just take it for granted that you're going to have to do some of the things you didn't like in your next job. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. That's not what figuring out your new destination is about. Your new destination can be ideal. Let yourself dream a little bit. I was having a call with a client even this week. And it's something that I ask all of them is like, listen, if you could do anything you wanted, if there was a magic lamp somewhere, or if you could wave a magic wand, what would it be? Give yourself that gift. You don't actually have to settle in your career at any time in your career. And especially when you find yourself at the crossroads of a job change. If you are at the nexus of this crossroads, there might actually be 4 different options for you, 4 different destinations that are aligned with your desires, that mesh perfectly with your natural behavioral strength traits, the traits that actually underpin success and happiness at work. That's the foundation right there. That's why with every new client I work with, we don't do a thing about figuring out their career path or writing their resume or even prepping for interviews until we review their personal dynamics report. Because when you know what your natural strengths are, how you would behave if there was no pressure to adjust, you suddenly create these aha moments in your own mind of, oh my gosh, that's exactly why I love to do this, and I kind of resist these other areas. It's because the other areas aren't aligned with your strengths. And it's really important for you to pay attention to that because your strengths are the clues to what will make you happy at work. Now, this last one is giving space to your loss. You will feel all kinds of feelings. That's because we're wired to work. I always say that we're naturally wired for community and contribution. It's this natural instinct to be part of something bigger than ourselves. When emotions surface, acknowledge those emotions. Don't repress those emotions. However, don't indulge in those emotions either. Don't let those negative emotions, when they arise, take you down a rabbit hole of despair. That's why this whole process that I just shared with you could really be put probably in a little circular diagram, because one thing leads to another, right? When you feel the sense of loss, you go back and you remind yourself of your accomplishments. When you remind yourself of your accomplishments, it's natural to think of, yeah, what did I like best? What do I want to do more of? What would I love to let go? And then those things start informing where you go next. So this is a cycle that you can manage deliberately, intentionally. You don't have to let the loss of your job ride roughshod over you. You don't have to. You're going to feel some things, and that's perfectly normal. Be glad that you're feeling some things. I love what Eckhart Tolle says. Make friends with those negative emotions that come up. But I also like what Michael Singer says, and that is when that stuff happens, let it pass. Instead of leaning into it, lean back. And he actually even mentions physically leaning back. Like, ooh, there's an emotion. Lean back and away from it instead of leaning forward into it. That'll help you let it pass through instead of indulging in it and letting it take you out. The other thing about giving space to your loss is being a curious observer to your own brain. If you can separate yourself from the emotions a bit, and you can just be an awareness, an observer that is aware of what you're thinking instead of living what you're thinking in your body. This is a conscious exercise, my friends, but it is so worth it to just step back and say, oh, yeah, I'm feeling a sense of loss today. Oh, I'm feeling a little betrayed today. Okay, what's that about? When you do that, you're just acknowledging the fact that you're a human being that has emotions, but you're also being an observer. And we know from physics, from quantum physics, that observation of a proton, observation of a thing affects it. And your simple observation, your simple act of observing and giving space to your loss and the feelings that come up with that is a redirect. Make those redirects back to your value, what you know you can offer. All right, my friends, you can see, I know, how this can be so helpful when you're dealing with the immediacy and the effects that are longer term of a job loss. But I also want you to leverage this for any kind of career disruption that you might be having. It works if you're dealing with a toxic workplace. It works if you're starting to feel a little out of sorts and like your job doesn't fit you anymore. These 4 things, writing down your accomplishments, reflecting on what you like and don't like, reevaluating your destination, and giving space to your feelings is the perfect formula for taking control of your career instead of just being along for the ride. And if you're following me on LinkedIn, send me a DM. On my LinkedIn profile, there is my calendar for virtual coffee meetups. They're no charge. It's just an opportunity for us to chat, for you to get some insights, for you to get some forward movement. I'm really good at diagnosing what's going on. My top 5 Clifton strengths are strategic, responsibility, maximizer, positivity, and developer. And I leverage every single one of them in every conversation to help you feel better, help you feel like you as you navigate this crazy thing we call work. All right. I'll talk to you again soon. If you like listening to this podcast, I invite you to visit my website at elissashuck-careercoach.com. On the site, you're going to find out everything you need to know about working with me on your career move, developing your leadership skills, as well as my courses, Job Search Field Guide, and The Art of Stellar Interviews. I look forward to meeting you soon. Take care.